The law that said, "Don't hunt buffalo from a hotel balcony." In the mid-1800s, Texas lawmakers were forced to solve a problem that sounds completely fake today, but was very real back then. People were literally shooting buffalo from hotel windows. As railroads expanded and towns grew, wealthy travelers would stay in frontier hotels and treat wildlife like moving targets, firing rifles from upper floors as if the prairie were a shooting gallery. Buffalo were everywhere, and apparently common sense was not. So Texas passed a law specifically banning the act of shooting a buffalo from the second floor of a hotel. Not from the ground, not from a horse, specifically from a hotel. That's what makes this law so funny, and so Texas. The wording survived, never repealed, meaning the law still technically exists, even though the buffalo don't. Today, it functions like a legal fossil, a reminder that lawmakers once had to regulate balcony snipers. Imagine explaining this in court now. "Your Honor, I wasn't hunting illegally, I was just standing on the third floor." Texas law would respond, "That's worse." The law reflects early Texas values. Guns were normal, hunting was normal, but reckless stupidity in public spaces was not. Even in the Wild West, Texas drew a line, and that line happened to be right below a hotel window. Own the tools, go to jail anyway. Texas criminal intent law. Texas has long believed that your thoughts can get you in trouble. Dating back to the late 1800s, Texas law made it illegal to possess burglary tools with intent to commit a crime. What makes this ancient law so strange is that the tools themselves are completely legal. Crowbars, bolt cutters, lockpicks, all fine. But the moment Texas decides you meant to use them for something bad, the crime is complete. No burglary required. This law came from a time when frontier towns had few locks and even fewer police, so lawmakers focused on stopping crimes before they happened. The result is a law that punishes suspicion. Today, the statute still exists in modern form, but the spirit remains ancient and unsettling. Are you a mechanic or are you a criminal? Texas will decide. The humor comes from how vague and powerful the law is. You don't need to break in. You just need to look like someone who might. It's one of the clearest examples of Texas saying, "Freedom is fine, but don't make us nervous." Milk the wrong cow, go to jail. Texas livestock theft law. In 1840s Texas, cows were wealth, survival, and status. So Texas lawmakers created brutally strict livestock theft laws, including one that makes milking someone else's cow without permission a criminal offense. Not stealing the cow, just the milk. This law still technically exists because it was never removed, only folded into broader theft statutes. The logic was simple. Milk was food, income, and survival. Taking it was no different than stealing money. Today, the idea sounds ridiculous. Imagine being arrested and explaining, "I didn't steal the cow, just borrowed the milk." Texas law would stare at you like you insulted its ancestors. This law shows how seriously early Texas treated property rights. You didn't touch another man's livestock, not even the part that walked back home on its own. Vote drunk, vote never. Texas election sobriety law. Texas once decided that democracy and alcohol should never mix. In the 1800s, when saloons sat right next to polling places, lawmakers worried that elections were being decided by whiskey instead of wisdom, so they passed a law banning voting while intoxicated. This law still exists, quietly sitting in Texas election regulations. The funny part is imagining how this would work today. Who decides if you're drunk? A poll worker, a sheriff, a vibes check? Back then, the concern was real. Bar fights, bribery, and drunken mobs were common. Texas responded by saying, "Come back sober." The law reflects an era when voting was treated almost like a sacred duty, one that required a clear head and steady hands. You can't sell your own eyeball. Texas body parts law. During desperate times in the 1800s, people tried selling parts of themselves to survive. Texas responded by passing a law making it illegal to sell organs or body parts, including eyes. The wording is ancient and blunt, and the law still exists today in modernized form. It's funny because it's so specific. Texas didn't say, "Don't exploit yourself." Texas said, "Your eyeball is not for sale." This law protected people from exploitation and prevented a black market of human desperation. It sounds absurd now, but it was deadly serious then. Texas law drew a hard line between property and humanity and refused to let the two mix. Behave yourself around the dead. Texas funeral decorum law. Texas law has long protected the peace of the dead. Dating back to the 1800s, the state made it illegal to disrupt funerals, use offensive language near a corpse, or behave disrespectfully during burial services. This law still exists under public order and decency statutes. The humor comes from imagining someone being arrested for excessive disrespect. But the message is clear. Grief is sacred. Even the roughest frontier Texans believed death deserved silence and respect. This law reminds us that beneath all the guns, dust, and bravado, Texas law has always drawn a line when it comes to dignity. Whistling at women can make you a criminal. Old Texas public decency law. In early Texas towns, lawmakers decided there was one sound more dangerous than gunfire at night: a man whistling at women in public. During the late 1800s, whistling, catcalling, and other forms of public harassment were considered disturbances of the peace. Texas treated it not as flirting, but as disorderly conduct. This law still survives today under public nuisance and harassment statutes, even though the language has been modernized. Back then, towns were small, reputations mattered, and public behavior was closely watched. A man whistling loudly at a woman could start fights, damage family honor, or escalate into violence. Texas responded the only way it knew how, by criminalizing the behavior. The funny part is imagining a Wild West saloon town where guns were legal, but a whistle could land you in jail. It shows that Texas law has never just been about toughness, it has also been about order. Even in the roughest days, lawmakers wanted public spaces to feel safe, especially for women. Today, the law's spirit remains, quietly reminding people that unwanted attention has never been just a joke in Texas. Borrow the horse, lose your freedom. Texas horse theft law. In 19th century Texas, stealing a horse was worse than stealing money. Horses meant survival, travel, and work, so Texas passed some of the harshest horse theft laws in America. Even borrowing a horse without permission counted as theft. This law still exists today under theft statutes, though the punishments are no longer brutal. The humor today comes from imagining someone saying, "I was just borrowing it," and Texas responding, "That's prison talk." Back then, losing a horse could mean death for the owner. Texas law treated the crime accordingly. The law survived because the principle still matters. Don't touch what isn't yours. It's ancient Texas logic still alive. Don't fire your gun near God. Texas Church Protection Law. Texas may love guns, but even in the Wild West there were limits. Dating back to the 1800s, Texas passed laws banning the discharge of firearms near churches during services. This law still exists today under public safety and weapon discharge regulations. The reasoning was simple. Worship was sacred, and chaos had no place near it. The funny part is imagining a time when gunfire was common, yet church services demanded silence and respect. Texas law carved out sacred space even in violent times. It's a reminder that faith once had legal protection, enforced with the same seriousness as property laws. Fake Texas Ranger, real prison time, Texas impersonation law. Pretending to be a Texas Ranger has always been a terrible idea. Since the late 1800s, Texas law has made it illegal to impersonate law enforcement, especially Rangers. This law still exists today because Texas Rangers are more than police, they're legend. In frontier times, fake Rangers abused authority, robbed towns, and escaped justice. Texas responded by making impersonation a serious crime. The humor comes from how sacred the badge is. You can dress like a cowboy, act tough and carry a gun, but fake a ranger badge, and Texas law shows no mercy. Sleeping at the cheese factory is illegal. Old Texas Health Ordinance. Some early Texas towns passed incredibly specific health laws, including bans on sleeping in cheese factories. Yes, cheese factories. The law still technically exists in some municipal codes. Why? Sanitation. Food production was dangerous, unsanitary, and prone to disease. Texas lawmakers decided humans did not belong near fermenting dairy. The law sounds absurd today, but it reflects a time when public health laws were hyper-specific. Texas preferred strange precision over vague warnings. It's funny now, but it once saved lives. Snake oil salesmen ruined it for everyone. Texas fake medicine law. In the late 1800s, Texas was flooded with fake doctors selling miracle cures. Snake oil, electric tonics, and bottled lies. Texas lawmakers cracked down hard, passing laws against fraudulent medicine that still exist today in consumer protection statutes. The humor comes from how aggressively Texas hated fake cures. The law basically said, if it sounds magical, it's illegal. This ancient law evolved into modern health regulations, but the spirit remains. Texas doesn't tolerate nonsense, especially when it's sold as medicine. Leave the sword at home, cowboy. Texas Deadly Weapons Law, 1871. Believe it or not, there was a time in Texas when carrying a gun was acceptable, but carrying a sword was considered suspicious, dramatic, and illegal. In 1871, Texas passed one of its earliest deadly weapons laws regulating what people could carry in public. And strangely enough, swords, daggers, and spears were specifically restricted. Guns were practical tools in Texas. Swords, however, suggested dueling, intimidation, or public showmanship. Texas lawmakers didn't want theatrics. They wanted order. This law still exists today in modified form under Texas weapons statutes, but the ancient wording survives in historical legal records. The humor comes from imagining a man legally carrying a revolver, but being stopped because he chose to bring a sword instead. Texas wasn't anti-weapon, it was anti-drama. A sword implied you wanted attention, conflict, or a medieval showdown on Main Street. The law reflects how Texas valued practicality over spectacle. Even violence, apparently, had to be efficient. Today, the law functions as a reminder that Texas has always regulated how weapons appear in public, not just whether they exist. No betting against the sky. Texas Weather Gambling Law, 1800s. In early Texas, weather wasn't small talk. It was survival. Rain meant crops lived. Drought meant families starved. That's why Texas outlawed gambling on weather outcomes in the 1800s. Yes, betting on rain was illegal. Farmers were already desperate, and lawmakers feared that weather betting would exploit fear, manipulate markets, and destabilize rural communities. This law still technically exists as part of Texas's early anti-gambling framework, though it's rarely enforced today. The absurdity now is imagining someone being arrested for saying, "I bet it rains tomorrow." But back then, that bet could destroy livelihoods. Texas didn't want outsiders profiting off natural disasters. The law shows how deeply lawmakers respected the power of nature. You could gamble on cards, dice, or horse races, but not the sky. Weather belonged to God, not bookmakers. Schedule a duel, schedule a funeral. Texas Anti-Dueling Law, 1830s. Before Texas was officially a state, it already decided that dueling was a bad idea. In the 1830s, Texas banned dueling entirely. This wasn't a slap-on-the-wrist law, it was a serious criminal offense. Dueling was once considered honorable, but Texas saw it as pointless death. The law still exists today in constitutional and criminal history records, making dueling illegal no matter how polite, agreed upon, or dramatic it is. The humor today comes from imagining two people formally agreeing to a duel, and Texas law calmly saying, absolutely not. Texas preferred courts over pistols, arguments over graves. This law shows a surprisingly civilized side of early Texas. Despite the violence of the frontier, lawmakers wanted disputes settled with words, not bullets. Even in the Wild West, Texas said there would be no scheduled shootouts at dawn.